as compared to a pure IT initiative, a pure IT project in a private or a public sector. So from here we start looking at some of the challenges which we have seen in terms of managing e-governance projects in the country. And what I'm sharing right now in 2-3 slides is the learnings which we documented in 2011 when NISG along with PMI and Grant Thornton did a dipstick study on understanding the key issues that are impinging the success of e-governance projects in the country. So the scope of work was one of the biggest high-level challenge which came up as a definition. How do we freeze the scope of work? That is where the key issue in terms of the spillover of the projects really happened. Okay, and because the scope of work is always at a high level, and many of the non-IT components are not planned initially or are missed out, and later on it becomes an issue for the implementing partner to add those as a part of scope of work with no additional cost. Then project execution challenges like measuring service levels, SLAs. It is important that e-government projects, because they are not only procurement of infrastructure but services, as we said. So how do you measure the quality of service? That becomes a challenge for us. How do you define the KPIs, key performance indicators? Okay. Then another one, if you look at the last point, the lack of continuity of project champions. This champions I'm talking about from the government side, who are the owners of the project, that becomes a challenge. Okay. The sign-off given by one government officer may not be accepted by the successor, and that's when we are looking at some of the even the UK or Canadian government challenges, they also have a similar challenge. The transfers of the champions take place, and the successor might not really accept what has been approved or agreed upon by the predecessor. And many times the successor likes to reevaluate even the certification of the work, even the scope of work and contract. So these are some of the prime challenges which came out of the study. And then we look at another challenge. PPP in e-governance projects is one of its kind, first kind, and it is difficult to apprehend the transaction volume based on which the public-private partner will come in and as a partner and deliver the said project along with you. The business model here becomes a challenge. The business model of implementing partner may not give a break-even during the contract tenure if over transactional the volumes which you have estimated are not correct. Okay, and the contracts today which we have in government, they really do not give us sufficient scope of renegotiation in case of unapprehended gains or losses by the partner. Okay, when we talk of PPP, actually we are looking at as a partnership, win-win for the private part sector as well as the government. It's not just outsourcing that you buy the computer and then you are cut off with the private partner. No, it's a joint venture sort of thing, win-win situation. If the government delivers, they'll be happy, and if this particular private partner is able to implement better, of course they'll be able to generate a business out of it. Okay, so it's a win-win situation. And then if the contracts are not designed today, to provide counter guarantees also to reduce the investment risk of the bidders. So what happens if there are delays in the sign-off? So there are no counter guarantees given by the government. It's not possible. That's how the procedures are, and we tend to transfer the risk to the partner, and that itself, what I just said, contradicts the PPP relationship between the two parties, that is the government and the private sector. It's a win-win situation, not just transferring the risk by having a private player. Okay. And let us look at some more challenges which were recommended which came out as a part of that study. Yeah, we are looking at the next slide. The system integrator or the consultant is solely responsible to manage the project timelines, even though delays maybe on account of the procedures of the government, okay, like the UAT, okay, sign-offs, various phases of the life cycle. Okay. Normally there would be a tendency to delay, and that delay is the cause of concern for the private partner because the payments are linked to that. How does the private player put in the resources with no cost or no revenue coming back to them? Okay. And the change of champions or the political shifts could be some other reasons in terms of the delays which normally happen in e-government projects as compared to maybe the other IT projects. Okay, then we also look at mostly projects fail to achieve the intended objectives and outcomes or benefits. This we have already, we were talking of this earlier also. We find it very difficult to define the parameters to measure the benefits. At the end of the implementation, how do you say that my project is successful? It's not successful because I have implemented a software, because I have set up the network, because I have trained my people. No. What are the measurable benefits to the citizens? Are they happy with the new set of services, and how do you measure that? So how do you say I have brought in accountability, I have brought in transparency due to this initiative? So what are the measurable parameters for accountability and transparency? That is what most of the time we fail to define this, and the success or failure becomes subjective depending on who is assessing the initiative. And yes, the lack of resources, dedicated champions and project teams from the department is a challenge. It's always taken as additional work. And e-governance or good governance cannot happen as additional work. It has to be taken as a part of our delivery of the services to our stakeholders, as a part of being in the government. Okay. So therefore, the lack of issues of ownership comes in. Okay. Government somehow, if you look at in these initiatives, they are never in control. Okay. This is a statement which we always look at, and there is a too much of dependency on external consultants or the SI. Okay. So how do we build up that internal confidence, ownership, and how does the government come in control? Okay. That's another challenge in these initiatives. Now, these were some of the challenges which I thought I'll try to bring up on board. And if we are to map these around the 9 knowledge areas of the PMBOK, then I think the slide is coming onto your screen. Yeah. So if you look at that, then all these can be mapped onto these 9 knowledge areas in terms of whether it's integration management. Okay, the issue is in terms of silo approach is a challenge. Each department within the same state government is trying to work independently. There's no common architecture. We talk about enterprise architecture in the private sector, but here we lack that particular spirit. Okay, and scope management, of course, that's a major challenge we have been talking about. Time management, we talked about it. Okay, HR, the turnover of the key person getting transferred, that is quite frequent, and inadequate resources who understand project management, who have